Folks, it is January 2022. Yes, we are live back in studio. I see my brother Dr. Bradley over there. He is smiling. He has missed this place immensely.
I have. You know, I was up bright and early this morning.
I know.
I
you beat me here, which is unusual. That's why I said when you called me and said, "Is the door open?" I'm like, "Well, I know Pastor Hobbs is in there."
I was outside sitting in the car, man, just relaxing. But it was I'm so happy to be back, man.
It is good to be back.
God is good, isn't it?
Yeah. How was your time off?
It was it was expensive.
It was expensive.
It was expensive.
So it's normal time off.
You know, I got girls, man. You know,
I have two.
Yeah, I'm trying to educate you.
Right. Yeah,
I got four.
You know, it's adding up. Though.
Yeah, but it was, and I got a granddaughter, my only granddaughter. So yeah, it's gonna be. It was expensive.
No, yeah, I see that smile. You even get wider when you mention the granddaughter.
Yeah, yeah.
It's something about girls and dads and granddads that do it. But good morning, Pastor Hobbs. How are you, sir?
By the grace of God, I'm well.
It's 2022. He's back to the old Pastor Hobbs over there, cleaner than the Board of Health. He called me this morning, doctor. He says, Can you bring me? I knew he was all dressed up because he asked me for a cappuccino with a sprig of almond milk. Oat milk. I said,
so I wonder why you're walking in with two guys.
I said, here we go. He's back.
Cappuccino, huh?
Cappuccino. Hey. I had to ask the lady what that was. I went through the McDonald's drive-thru.
Oh man,
yeah, good morning. You're listening at the Round Table with Mamily. We want to thank our sponsor, Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company, located at 75 State Street on the first floor in downtown Boston, Mass. On Franklin Street there. 75 State Street, I'm down Franklin. Let's get it back there. For all your mortgage needs, get branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. Folks, like I said, you're listening to At the Round Table with Mamleo. I am in the house with my brother, Dr. Bradley. So excited to see this brother. He's all tanned up, folks. You don't know.
Oh, I was born with this tan, doc. This is natural. Yeah. I'm this color all the time.
Oh, okay.
By the grace of God. Yeah. When I went to Cabo, they were like, "Whoa!" I was like, "Yeah."
It was sad. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Let the sun shine.
Let the sun shine right on me because God made that.
People pay a lot of money for that.
Yeah. Yeah,
so to get that type of melatonin.
It doesn't come off.
Man, it doesn't crack either.
It doesn't crack. I was after when a guy was like, "How old are you, man?" I was like, "I'm 65." He goes, "No way." No, absolutely. There's a lot of way.
Well, see, and like you, we have young wives, so that keeps you younger.
Yeah, it keeps you very young.
Keeps you
Trust
young.
me.
You're trying to keep up.
Keep up. You're on that bike and working out every day.
I need a bike. I have a 7 and a 2-year-old.
Oh yeah, so that's your bike, Doc.
And a 2-year-old, man, I tell you, man, I love her to death, but man, you need 3 eyes.
Yes,
you need 3 eyes, and then another set.
Yes, Lord.
I love her, man, but I tell you, sometimes I just laugh. She and I were hanging out last night together. My wife and my oldest had went to a play that my daughter was going to be in, so. I love those times, but man, just watching her develop and just her kids as they grow, because they're gonna be on that stage not too long. So you just enjoy it, and it's like just me and daddy hanging out.
Brother, what I can tell you, being on the other side of that, it won't be long for that same individual look at you and say, "Dad, do you remember this? Do you remember that?" It's like. What?
I know.
Where did that come from? You know what I mean? You can actually recall that? Oh, yes, I can.
Yeah, I know.
So it doesn't take long. Man.
It doesn't.
Our youngest just turned 21.
Wow.
When we were in Cabo, she turned 21, and we were walking down the street, and she goes, "I think I'm gonna go and buy some tequila." I was like, "What?"
Right. Right.
I'm 21. I was like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. And my brother beat me to it, but I'm gonna say, good morning, brother Harry Scales and the folks up at Prince Hall for continuing to do their due diligence there, getting those vaccines and the tests there, the COVID tests, the booster shots. All of that work they're doing up there. So I want to say hearty good morning to those brothers and sisters there at the Prince Hall up in Uptown Grove Hall. Also, at this time, every broadcast, we usually have to travel a little bit further to say good morning to our other brother there. You know who that is, Dr. Bradley.
Oh, Brother Bridgeful.
Yes. Where are we heading, Dr. Bradley?
We're going to Indiana.
Indiana, like the Jacksons say.
Indiana, here I come.
Here I come. So he beat us to it this morning. We didn't forget you, brother. Good morning, Brother Bridgeford. Happy New Year to you, and I hope you're well down there, you and the family down in Indiana. We'll send some of this snow down there in case you didn't
have
get
it, brother. Especially around my place.
Oh, man. We got a little over a foot, too, you know?
Yeah, we got hit.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I guess winter is here.
It is. We got spoiled, you know, because the other day prior to that it was like 50 degrees.
I know.
50 degrees. And then they say, it's supposed to get some rain, so maybe most of it will wash away. But I think we've gotten spoiled. You know?
Well, we have. Yeah. We have. But I tell you now, it's definitely there, man. Yes. I got up this morning and I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Old man winter.
Old man winter.
It's here.
Old man winter facing old man Dr. Bradley.
We know who wins that battle every
old
time.
Man winter wins every
time. 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. You're listening at the Round Table with Mamley, with Dr. Bradley and myself, Larry Ellison. We are in the house. We're live in studio. This is our first broadcast, Dr. Bradley, of 2022. I tell you, it was nice being off, but it is definitely nice being back here in the seat, and a lot has taken place since then and continued. We've come up on the anniversary. We want to get into that in the 7 o'clock hour, but in the 8 o'clock hour, we want to talk about Mayor Wu's selection for the search committee for the new police commissioner. One of the names that I have, the only name I really have any issues with, is her selection of former Commissioner Ed Davis, and we're going to get into that in the 8 o'clock hour as to why that's not a progressive pick, that he should be disqualified based on his antics, his actions, and in his racism, in my opinion, at his time at BPD. I don't know, you can Google search anyone today and you can find all the information that's out there from his time in Lowell when he was even a detective. I mean, his history goes way back, way back.
Yeah, I just can't understand how we can move forward when we keep reaching backwards.
No.
But we can hold that.
Absolutely. But I just want to give folks that little tease.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about that. And then at 9 o'clock hour, a story you're going to find very interesting, Dr. Bradley, still down in Alabama, and predominantly black neighborhood there, where their septic system is I saw this on the 60 Minutes broadcast a few weeks ago, and it was just so appalling that here we are in 2022 and our folks are still living like it's 1902.
Well, that's the system, man. I mean, when you look at the history of America, it's always about keeping the former slaves, black people now, in a state of dependence. In a state of unequal, living in an unequal society.
Separate
so
and unequal.
Separate. That's what I'm looking for.
Separate and unequal.
Their brain is still cold.
It takes a minute to get back warmed up here.
But that is the situation, man. And unfortunately, we're still, striving to keep black people in that position where they're, subservient to other cultures, other segments of society. So that's sad.
Right, and then we have to ask ourselves that what are we doing? Because, what's happening is we just celebrated the anniversary of January 6th, the insurrection, which some people are still trying to categorize as a visit to the Capitol, right? And that some people, you look at where this country is, and even I called in one of the broadcasters here on this week, was still trying to represent this as somehow it wasn't what it was, and that when I talked to him about, because this is the big lie. And when he said, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater when you know it's not a fire. He said, yes, you can. When there's a fire. Let's not be with semantics here. I'm not saying you could never yell fire in a crowded theater, but if there is no fire, you've got a problem.
Well, I anticipate a call on this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I found to be strikingly, I would say a shame, in my opinion.
It is shameful.
Was that there was no Republicans. Only one Republican standing on the floor.
Right. And a former vice president who
was hated by
Democrats. But it was mainly on policy differences, right? And that's what you used to have was. And that's differences in the absolutely.
That's okay.
That is healthy.
Yes.
That is healthy. And whoever is in control, right? But when you have someone, Donald Trump, and I was glad to see that President Biden finally called him out for it. Finally called him out for what he had done, you know, because most presidents don't try to call out former presidents. They, you know, it's this little small, unique club, right? And they know how difficult it is. So they usually shy away from that. But even, you know, former President Bush, George Bush, the junior, has not come to his defense. And normally these folks, even if they're in the same party, they will have hasn't had one decent thing to say because he's not a decent human being.
But you know what strikes me as obvious, and again I'm ashamed of, is that the Republican Party is trying to act as if nothing happened. One individual said, if you know, it was like a normal day.
It was a tourist visit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying. So you're gonna tell me what I saw is not what I saw.
But it's not even what you. It's not what you saw, Dr. Bradley. These same people were helping barricade the door. These same people were hiding under benches. These same people were experiencing the fear.
But my question is if they're loyal to Donald Trump at that level, where they're actually lying to themselves about being in peril, then how loyal are they to the Constitution?
They're not. That's where the big lie continues, right? Because what you're trying to do is turn this into an autocratic country, right, where we have a king. And you said this numerous times that we don't elect. You did. It plays over in my head. You said Donald Trump thought we elected a king.
Yeah. I said, you know, and if you go back and look at some of the past recordings of the show, I said every person there is running for president except one. Donald Trump's running for king.
You're right.
Because president is too limited for him. His mindset, and you know, and also I also said that peaceful transformation of power. A transfer of power, I should say, is no longer going to happen in America because Donald Trump is not going to relinquish that power easily.
I think this is the first time in this country where you didn't have a concession. Even when Al Gore, as painful as it had to be when he lost to Bush, when the Supreme Court, in a lot of people's opinion, decided based on the Florida, the Chad ballots, right, that when he lost, he didn't say that George Bush was not the duly elected president. He as much as it had to be painful, right? But he moved on. He moved on.
Yeah, he did, and he moved on because of the sake for the sake of the union.
Right.
You know, he didn't actually. You know, he could have protested it,
and he could have tried to make him an illegitimate. Just what Donald Trump is doing. It's so a loser.
But Donald Trump is about himself, not the country.
And if telling people and allowing them to go in there and go after his vice president, the person who is a heartbeat away from the presidency. Right. If that doesn't tell you something about him, right?
But yet you have people who are saying, well, this president is illegitimate, but Biden is. He was not elected. But I think what people, in all this mess, what we should not lose sight of is that when they're talking about illegitimacy, when they're talking about stolen election, they're talking about, in my opinion, the people of color deciding who's going to run this country. Because when you look at the swing states and the block of votes that they tried to nullify, for lack of a better term, what they're doing is that they're trying to nullify all those votes that come from the black community. Detroit, majority of that city is black. Atlanta, we know what that is. Philadelphia,
Milwaukee,
Milwaukee. So all those counties that contain urban areas that were populous by black people, they tried to nullify that vote. They tried to actually decertify that vote. So what they're doing is that, and the next time around, they're giving themselves the power to decertify segments of society, free vote. That's what they're doing.
No, you're absolutely right, because 2022 this year will be the test, right? Because of congressional seats, right? They've gerrymandered the maps to give them an advantage, right? They've carved out the maps in those states, and people are saying, well, you know, I don't live in Georgia, so how does this impact me?
It impacts you significantly.
Absolutely, because the legislation, if they have control of the Congress and the Senate, it affects you.
Well, it also affects you because the people that they actually select to various committees are coming up, are thinking through, are talking through, are recommending policies that are going to have a direct impact on you because you're part of the union.
Right.
You know, so that people have to understand, well, yeah, that's Georgia. No, that Georgia senator that Georgia's sending to the Republican account in the Senate, that senator is going to serve on a committee. That committee will actually look at bills and look at laws and come up with practices to recommend to the entire floor to vote into law. That law is going to impact you. So it's very important that you listen to and be a part of and state your voice about what other states are doing, because they're a part of the union.
Right. And the irony to what you're saying, Dr. Bradley, is that these are folks who claim they're strict constitutionists, right? And they're pledging an oath not to the Constitution but to an individual, as if we had kings. Very similar to the way Russia and you're right, Trump. Now we understand even more why he had such a fondness to autocratic leaders, right? Like North Korea and Russia, you know, all those type of folks, because he wanted to be like them, where their people really don't have a say. And he wants the United States to be that, where he is king for life, and then he appoints his successor, you know, one of his family members to do so. And right to your point, you know, like you said, is that we're looking at, you know, you go back in history, this is really no different. It's just a modern day version of it, right? Where you had people like George Wallace and such alike, right, that were elected. That's what the Marjorie Taylor Greens and those folks are today, right? Are that modern day version of that. And it's like in your face. And I think we thought we had gotten past that, where people would be arguing about differences in their policies, not in what people look like as much.
America will never get past racism until we deal with the issue, until we deal with the history. You know, so when you look at the history of the country, there's always been this concerted effort by the controlling group to keep black people and indigenous people and people of color in a subservient state of living. So that's the one piece. I want to go back to what I was talking about earlier, as opposed to as it relates to everything is happening concerning you. Joe Manchin is a very good example of what I just mentioned. Joe Manchin is the senator from West Virginia, but because the Senate is 50-50 and the vice president is the tying vote, well, the Democrats now runs the Senate, but they have to have all the senators. If one senator deviates, then McConnell may as well be the individual in controlling the Senate. So Joe Manchin is not your senator, but because Joe Manchin will not, he stands fast and strong against voting rights. We can't get it past the Senate. You know, that. So that's important. You know, people have to understand that senator is important to you, regardless of where he or she are representing of their district.
And even that, you know, they want to change the filibuster to allow the changes so they can move the voting rights law. And they say, oh, we can't do that. They just did it. They do it all the time. They did it to raise the debt ceiling. Exactly. So it went, and to me, this is more important than the debt ceiling.
Yes, it is.
Voting rights, because that is supposed to be the fundamental rights of this country. It's the ability to vote.
That's the cornerstone to any democracy. Is the ability to vote, you know, and so I just want to give you a little bit of the history. The 15th Amendment, which was one of the amendments passed after the Constitution around the Reconstruction. In fact, the Reconstruction, that particular area, you saw more progress done by black people who were in government until they were actually removed after Johnson removed the federal troops. But that's another conversation. But the 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote. Black men, and it basically says in a nutshell that you should not deny or abridge, you know, a person the right to vote in federal or state government, a person the right to vote based on color, race, religion, servitude, and all that stuff. What they're doing is abridging it. Abridging means to shorten, you know, to reduce. So what they're doing is that around the country, most of the states have passed laws, you know, to actually limit the availability of the voting booth to you. You know what I mean? I'm saying, come on, people.
And to that point, most of these cases have been challenged, not just in the state courts, but in the federal courts. And a lot of these judges were appointed by Donald Trump, because that's one thing Mitch McConnell did was he made sure, if he did nothing else, was stack the federal courts so that they with people who they thought. But to the credit of the vast majority of them, I would say 99.9% of the decisions were against Donald Trump, in saying there was no voter fraud here. There was nothing to see here, which he thought that when he puts people in place, that they are there to do his bidding, right? And these judges did not do that. But at the state level, where now you're taking even that authority from the judges.
Yeah, because
you're passing laws at the state level.
Exactly, because you have to understand that the executive branch is that runs deal with the executive areas of government. The judiciary branch deal with the law.
Right.
So, and the representative or the legislative branch deal with creating the law. That's one of the sources of creating laws.
Right.
So, if you have the law created by the legislative branch, the judicial branch has to make a decision on that law.
Interpretation.
They have to interpret that law. And now the Constitution, the Supreme Court is the only court that's mentioned in the Constitution, but it is responsible for interpreting the laws, the constitutional law, among other things. But that's one of its primary responsibilities. So I see the restriction on voting rights going up to the Supreme Court, but you have a majority conservative court.
But to that point, Dr. Bradley, the Supreme Court has already gutted the Voter Rights Act.
Absolutely.
So you know what's going to happen when these challenges come down. They've already said.
But they have said, though, when Roberts wrote his opinion, he said that the state or the federal government can address these issues. You know, because what they had was this clause in the Voting Rights Act that said that before a state can make changes, it has to be approved by the government. There's a component of the Constitution that basically says that the voting process is the territory of the state, not the federal government, and that's what he was actually making his decision on.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say that it's important that we have a Voting Rights Act, because with the Voting Rights Act, the way that John Lewis wrote it before he passed, it would limit things like gerrymandering. When you're actually, carving up districts so that you can support, that they'll vote for one particular party.
We're in some dangerous times. 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. Your listeners at the round table with Ma'am Leo. We're discussing here, the insurrection that took place a year ago, just a little over a year ago, January 6, 2021. When Donald Trump and his mob, he said, we're going to go down there and we're going to raise some sand. He didn't say I'm just being appropriate here. We're going to raise some sand. We're going to fight like hell, he said, and I mean, and again, Dr. Bradley, I was watching some of these same people, even Kevin McCarthy, he put the blame where it was on Donald Trump. Even Lindsey Graham, right, who is his flip flop, he's like a bobblehead dog. He put all of them put the blame in the heat of the moment, and now all of a sudden they've all backpedaled and they've all gone back to their corners at Fox News and these conservative outlets. This is not about whether or not you're a Republican or Democrat. This is about whether you're an American. This is about whether or not the truth means anything. And all these things that people, this is why I say I don't get so wrapped up into the Constitution and things like that, because it's just a useful tool when people want to use it against someone else, right? But when you look at it, the Constitution says in there that all men, and like I said, you can go back and see, because it was all men who wrote it, that were they really thinking about women and people of color, because none of those folks were at the table when this was written, right? So you've had amendments to the Constitution, but to see it being shredded in the way that it is for an individual, for power. This is the same reason why they said they left England, because taxation without representation. This is what they're trying to put on black people, poor people, people who vote differently. A taxation without representation, and to set it up in a way where you get no relief from the courts, you get no relief from anyone, that this is just how business is going to be done. And this should scare people, not just because you don't live in Georgia or some of these red states like Florida, because that will impact you. Because if your people in Massachusetts vote maybe the way that you would like them to, but the majority is what controls things in Washington, D.C.
Well, one would argue that should be the case. But if you think about it, there's a minority of the population that sent senators up to Washington, and that minority of that population is controlling the policies and the laws that are coming down from Washington. Right. So unfortunately we have democracy pushes for the majority rule, but in the way that we have tweaked it turned it and massaged it and manipulated our democracy. It's a weird way of actually doing law, and in this case, it looked like the minority is actually dictating how the majority of the country is going to.
Yes.
Want to be running.
Well, it looks like our callers have waking up, so we want to bring them online. All right, yeah. Oh, that's okay. Yes, go ahead. We're going to say our prayer. We're going to get you in the second caller. We're going to have Pastor Hop. See, we've been here a while. We're going to interject our prayer.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
I do appreciate
that reminder. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate that reminder. We definitely should have done that. So we probably want to hold on for a
second.
No,
we're going to go ahead. Pastor Hobbs.
Okay. Please.
Father God, we thank you for your grace, for your mercy, God. We thank you for this day that you made, and we choose to rejoice and be glad. And Father, cancel the plans of the enemy. Render the enemy's arsenal useless, cause confusion and the enemy's camp. Bless this broadcast, all that's said and done, that you're glorified in and through it. We count this as done in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you for that, Pastor Hobbs.
Thank you, Pastor Hobbs, and thank you for the caller for reminding us.
Yes. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the Prayerful Round Table. Come on. Yes.
Pastor Walker was first.
Okay, Pastor Walker, go ahead.
I told you I was anticipating this
Pastor
call.
Dan Walker, yes. He should have. If you could have gotten that number before those other two people in California and wherever, then we would have had something. But good morning, Pastor Dan. We're just talking about you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Bradley.
Good morning, sir.
How did you manage to get on the news as you were leaving?
I was waiting for someone to come with that. What happened was we're having difficulties with the kiosk check-in. This guy approached me and asked me pretty much, was I afraid of traveling due to COVID?
Yeah.
I didn't recognize the guy. I was like, I'm just having a conversation. And then I looked at it and I saw this 7 microphone. And I was like, oh my God, I'm on the news. You know what I mean? The guy was asking me where I was from. I was like, well, I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia, but I live in Boston. He was like, no. And so I realized, my wife was like, you realize that you were on Channel 7? So as I'm traveling, and then when we flew into LA, and I looked at my phone after bringing it off of airphone mode. I get all these texts like, "Hey man, may I have your autograph?"
Yeah. Again, right? So you're a celebrity.
I was like, "What in the world happened?" And
then I realized
behind
the voice.
I saw everything.
The face behind the voice.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah.
That was just one of those conversations.
Yeah. Right. No, I usually don't watch local news because it's kind of not where my head is at. Mm-hmm. But I just happened to hear the voice, and I went, I know that voice. That is But the good news is, usually they find the most ignorant person in the world to interview. This time they found one of the most intelligent persons.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Doc.
Well, we'll see if he's saying that after we go.
Well, no, we can agree to disagree on some point.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how many people were actually arrested as a result of January 6th's insurrection? And yes, in fact, according to the strictest definition, it was an insurrection. So do you know how many people were arrested? Just rough.
I think I want to say, I know it was over 700 people identified. I don't know exactly what the number is. Even if it was one, it was one too many.
Okay, so fair enough. Let's say there's two numbers. One is like 530 something. The other was 750 people that have been arrested based on the January 6th. Mm-hmm. You know how many have been charged with insurrection?
0.
It's not
absolutely
about
none. No. Hold it. Before you say it's not about what they're charged with, this is an insurrection. And if you are going to arrest 700 and some odd people, you think one of them might actually be charged with an insurrection.
Well, they're not done yet. So.
I'm just saying.
Right. But as of yet, it is how you want to frame that, right? Because it's still an active investigation, right? So
as of yet, nobody has been charged.
Okay. So you have that. What else do you have, Dan? Other than that, we'll give you that. No one has been charged with insurrection.
It's not a matter of giving me that. It's a matter of
Okay. So we've identified no one as of yet has been charged with insurrection. Okay. Right, but they have been charged with a crime.
They've all been charged with individual crimes based on their actions.
Okay. So how would you categorize what took place that day? Because listening to your broadcast, You sounded like a lot of the conservative people who were hiding under the desk, who were helping barricade the door, saying that these folks are here to harm us, and now walking it back, saying this was just a tourist visit, and then watching them tear down. Oh, they were just breaking out. It was a vandalism. I mean, come on, this is the nation's capital. This is where we send people to do the business of the people of the country, and to desecrate it like that, flying Confederate flags. A Confederate flag until that day had never been flown in the Capitol.
Not only did he fly, hold up.
And see, here's where you and I are going to agree.
Hold up 1 second, Dan. Dan, hold up for 1 second. Yeah. I want to make sure I put this out because I'm over 60. It's not going to stay long. He flew the Confederate flag in the Capitol, all right, in the Hall of Honor, and he stood next to John C. Calhoun. John Caldwell Calhoun. John C. Calhoun was significant there because John C. Calhoun was the person who pushed the doctrine of nullification, nullifying any federal government. He said that any state should have the right, including the 15th Amendment, by the way, to nullify any policy or any law that comes from the federal government because it is its own sovereignty. The state is. So that individual who stood next to John C. Calhoun and imposed, he knew that history. But I just want to
he was sending a message.
He sent a message.
Dan, go ahead, and then I'm gonna have you stand by because I want you to answer that, and then we're gonna bring the other caller into this conversation.
Well, okay. So what I think happened was essentially shameful. I think the whole concept of flying the Confederate flag. I think that the riot that took place on January 6th was a group of people, some who I personally believe were sent there deliberately to do what they did, which was to cause confusion. Not everybody that breached the Capitol was arrested. So that tells me not everybody that breached the Capitol was actually a problem. But now, let me just stop you there for 1 second, because see, that's the same false narrative that I keep hearing, right? Because when that argument is used, when Black Lives Matter say there were people who interjected into their crowd who caused this, that's not good enough for the other side. And even the folks who are pushing this lie, because that's what it is, say the same thing. So that's why I say don't use that unless you're going to accept it from both sides. Okay, so here's the problem.
Not here's the problem. How do you justify one side? You're saying people were there, just came there to cause problems. But if people have a Black Lives protest and it gets out of control and it's vandalism and death, it's not acceptable.
It's not acceptable in either fact, and I don't justify any breaking of the law in this situation. There are times when breaking of a law is necessary. Unjust laws need to be broken and challenged. There's no question about that. Our history. Our whole country is based on the fact that we have to break laws that are unjust. So, but when it comes to what happened, here's my problem. Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, went to Nancy Pelosi before all of this happened and asked for greater Capitol security and was turned down.
You show me, like I said with the other thing you said the other day, Dan. Show me. It's not the problem. You're throwing them out there. Show me the proof of this.
Okay, well, the last time I attempted to show you proof, you didn't like it.
I didn't like it. You didn't have any proof. You had something that you said came from somewhere, and I said, show me. You attributed it to the FBI, and I said, show me where they put it out. That's all I'm asking you is for factual information.
Here's the problem. The
problem is you keep putting stuff out there that you can't support.
No, Rutgers.
Dan, stand by. I'm going to bring this other caller in. Stand by. I want to bring this other caller in because if you don't have proof of what you're saying, I can't accept it. Caller, good morning. Welcome to the roundtable.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. This is T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy.
Good morning, T.
This is wonderful. Good morning. This is wonderful. At the end of the day, you can say whatever you want. What happened, happened. And there is no way that if you have love for this country and the Constitution, there's no excuse, whatever the reasonings are. If you believe in democracy under any condition, why would you desecrate or disrespect the House of the People? Doesn't matter the reasoning or what happened before or whatever. So there's no excuse, Dan. Absolutely none. You could spin it any which way you want. I'm serious.
T. Michael, I have the greatest respect for you, but to say that I'm trying to spin something is not accurate. What I said was that not everybody that went to the Capitol was there to cause harm. That's what I said. Now,
and Dan, I will say this again. If you and I were driving in a vehicle and it got pulled over and there was illegal substance or paraphernalia in that car, guilty by association, period. So whether these were all adults, these were all over 20-year-old, 18-year-old people.
Right, T. Michael, let me interrupt you. So here's an analysis I can use. We've been seeing recently where these folks have been going in and mobbing these stores, break into these buildings, right? And they go in. So now if I decided to go in with them, and then the police show up, and I say, well, I wasn't really here to take anything. Since the window was broken, I just went in with everybody else. When I know good and well what these folks going in there doing after hours, this isn't why the place is open, and I get caught inside there while this is taking place, I came there to support what was taking place, whether or not I broke a window or not. I was part of it. So we're not going to do these semantics around it like Dan would like us to. Everyone there was there because Trump told them that the election was stolen, and they were there on this big lie. That's what it was. They came there, geared up. He ginned them up down there, telling them we're going to go down there and fight like hell because the election had been stolen from him. They were flying mostly Trump flags, not American flags. All the courts, even people that Donald Trump had appointed to the bench and the federal court systems at and folks at the state level who he did not appoint, said there was no proof of any voter fraud, none. If there was, very little whatsoever. Even that shenanigan. Wait, let me finish, Dan. That all of this they went. I think was Arizona. I'm sorry, in Arizona, where they went and they spent all this money for this recount in Arizona, and not one lick of fraud. All this money wasted. What? Theatrics. So we're not going to allow that on this broadcast. If you don't come with the truth, I have no use for it. I don't with somebody.
Larry, can I make a really good point here? And I shouldn't, but I will. It's harsh. It's very harsh, but it's real. If I went out on a date and I walk a female to her door, she can give me a hug or whatever. I open the door, she walks in. She says to me, "Stop, have a good night." I'm supposed to walk away, get back in my car and drive away and say, "Have a good night." If I put my foot over that threshold, I'm as guilty, I'm wrong, I'm ignorant as you can call it. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, if everyone has said there's been no crime, that's why these states, this is about losing. And I think President Biden set the right tone the other day in his speech. This was someone who was a sore loser, and he can't accept the fact that he lost. And he was setting that stage from the beginning. He said it the same thing if he had lost to Hillary, that it was rigged. But since he won, that wasn't a rigged election. And all the other people that were down ballot, the Congress and the senators that won, so their elections should be illegitimate as well, Dan. So this is what I'm saying. If you're not going to be factual, and I'm not taking a side here on either side, because like I said, I don't belong to any party. But I will not sit here and have people try to tell me what I saw wasn't what I saw. And whether it was called an insurrection or whatever it was a desecration.
It was insurrection.
Absolutely. You know, that if this had taken place by black people, had stormed the Capitol over issues. Right now, if we decided, you know what, we're seeing what's happening in this country with Republicans trying to take away the rights of black people to be able to vote. Let us go down to Washington, D.C. and storm the Capitol and see how many of us, one person was killed and they're trying to make her out to be a martyr, a hero. And as I told you on your broadcast the other day, Dan, I wouldn't have done anything different than that officer did there. He is trained to protect those folks. And someone breaking the window, you're trying to say she was being pushed through that window. She was a willing accomplice to that. And unfortunately, she was murdered. She was killed, actually. She was killed by her own actions because she could have avoided it.
Again, you are confusing what I said.
I'm not confusing it. I'm straightening it. I'm correcting it. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, you're correcting it from your point of view. It doesn't mean that you're right.
I didn't say I was right.
Your point of view is, and the other part of this is you keep trying to say that I supported what happened. And I have not said I supported it or not. What I have said was that it was an insurrection. What I've also said publicly is I would like all of the facts to come out, and they're not.
Dan, there were a lot. Let me just say, because see, you talking about some of the people went inside that building, weren't there to do any harm. The people that knew it was wrong to go in there were a lot of people that they didn't go inside. There were a lot of people who could have went inside.
Me. Okay, all right, hold it, because you said this, and there are on tape Capitol Police allowing people to enter the building. You get the narrative that you have is that people surrounded the Capitol and stormed the Capitol and broke everything to get in. That's not what happened. There were people that were actually allowed to go in by the Capitol Police. So that's where I get to say not everybody that was in there to cause a problem. What I'm trying to say is this whole thing was bad enough. We don't have to make it worse. Can we just say exactly what happened?
Well, listen,
can I make another point?
Go ahead, team. And Dr. Bradley wants to weigh in.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Let's go back a little. Do you remember the blind sheikh?
Yes.
He was incarcerated because he was charged with being a mastermind behind terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right so far?
Yes.
And
so far you are correct.
Yes, he's blind. So we know physically he couldn't do a lot of things, but because of his guidance or involvement, he was found guilty. So, step forward.
Whoa. Hold on, T. Michael. He was found guilty because he directly called for the violence that happened. He said it was his duty to act against the great Satan, which was America. He not only did he guess at it or informate it, he said point blank, "It is our job to do this." He was found guilty on his own.
Go ahead, Dr. Bradley. Go ahead.
But listen, I have two hits. My first hit is what Dan is right in the sense that everyone didn't go to do it, but they were there. Mm-hmm. And they were a part of the mob. They were a part of the insurrection. I would say that insurrection give you a good example of how America has two governments. Mm-hmm. They have a government for black people and a government for white people. Mm-hmm. White folks can do things that we cannot do. Right. So I know for a fact, the way that America has treated black and indigenous folks in this country, if we go down to Washington, D.C. and voice our discontent, like you read the Declaration of Independence, it says it very clearly. When that government stops to provide, you have a right to eradicate it. Mm-hmm. All right, as a citizen. So if we use that right, we're going to be slaughtered. White folks can do it. Hold up, no, I didn't say anything. I let you spoke. Please let me speak. So if we go out and we do that, we're going to be eradicated. There's no question about it. We'll be slaughtered. Mm-hmm. All throughout the history of this country, white folks have done things that we could not do. And you can just look at the history of America. There's two different governments. My other hit is that Dan just described exactly what Donald Trump did when he told them, you're going to march down to that Capitol and we're going to do this. You're going to fight like HELL to save your country. What country are you saving? Why is it your country and it's not my country? Right. So therefore, to say that there have not been, a lot of arrests, I agree with him. There has not been a lot of conviction around. There has been zero convictions around insurrection, and that's the issue. The issue is that they're using the misdemeanors and the low-level felonies to address these issues, but it would be executions if it was black people.
Absolutely.
So
even one
that's my position.
Dr. Bradley, two things. First of all, as usual, we agreed to a great degree. However, let me ask you something, and I'm not being facetious with this question. You yourself have a doctorate. Is your doctorate any less or any more valid than a Caucasian person with a doctorate?
No, it's a doctorate. A doctorate is a doctorate.
But it doesn't mean that because he's a black man that he's going to be treated differently.
Hold it.
No.
If you're gonna try my case, don't lose it. Other than that, let me try my own case. since a doctorate is a doctorate, it is strictly based on the person who is wielding it, who earned it, and how they earned it. Now, yes, there has always been two Americas, and we already know this. However, I think it's time for black people to start fighting with their best weapons. And for the longest time, we have not fought with our best weapons. We have tried to use a system that one could argue that has been stacked against us. One can argue that has been stacked against all indigenous people. Because how do you come to America and discover a land where people are already there? But be that as it may.
Dan, I got another call on the line I want to get to, but I see to your point there about fighting we did fight with our best weapon on let me finish. We went to the ballot box and we voted. That's our best weapon, is voting. And now they're trying to take that away from us because we did utilize the best weapon we have in this country, is voting. And now they are trying to take that from us.
Excuse me.
Stand by, Dan. I want to grab this call. Good morning, call.
Well, let me get
this call in.
One point in. Yeah. And then Joe Biden is president now because of the best weapon used, because he was voted in.
That's right.
So I fail to see, and we keep thinking that this whole diversion, this whole split happened with Donald Trump. It didn't.
No, it started when we elected our first black president. That's where it started. Stand by, Dan. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning. This is Jamal calling.
Good morning.
We're all in together. We're all here together this morning.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about the idea of this. The group of folks who went,
the tourists, the tourists.
Yeah, and this whole thing that Pastor Dan is pushing, where not everybody who went up there to cause trouble or harm. Mm-hmm. Well, as our people, we have something, that comes out of this thing, the mob mentality, right? And the lynch mob. Mm-hmm. Now, some of y'all have seen the movies, or might even have experienced it, or saw it in real life. But there were times when, let's say a black man was in the jail. The sheriff got the black man in the jail, most likely for a crime he didn't even commit, right? Mm-hmm. But the people are not satisfied with the law. Mm-hmm. They're like, no, sheriff, we want him. Mm-hmm. Give us him, boy.
Mm-hmm. Good point, okay? Jamal. Go ahead. I see where you're going.
Says nah. Sheriff says nah. And then gossip goes around the town. And eventually, round about midnight, a crowd assembles outside the sheriff's office. Now, let's say it's a crowd of 100, 150 people. Everybody who's there didn't kick down the sheriff's door.
But they're there.
Or take the keys off the deputy. Mm-hmm. Or go into the cell and drag Jim Bob out the cell. That might have been done by just 5 or 6 people.
But they're there.
But they knew why they came.
Was there, they came for the show. And then when they dragged Jim Bob down by the river and put him up over that tree and lynch him, we've all seen the photos.
And no one stopped them. Mm-hmm. No one intervened.
Hundreds of people, okay? And it was it only take maybe 2 men to tie a rope around the thing and throw the other end around a branch and hoist them up and get the horse and all that type of thing. So it's only a couple of people who are actually involved in the lynching. But boy, look at that sea of smiling faces.
Great point.
Of all those who were there to take it in and watch the show, and I'm sure they're egging it on too. Hang them up higher. When they're beating them, because people think, a lynching is just a lynching. No, they're beating them and all. Hit them again, Charlie. Okay, they're egging it on. All right. And when we saw some of these women, some soccer mom looking women, some old misshapen, out of shape looking old middle of America housewife
on a cane going down the stairs.
But they were there, and the reporter said, "Well, what do you think we should have did? We should have went all the way in, and we should have got the senators, and we should have grabbed them out by the scruff of their necks, and we should have hung them up." So once again, too, although some of the people who were able-bodied are doing the thing, some of the people out in the crowd who were the spectators are even more vicious. You've been to a football game.
Yes, I have.
Some of the fans are more vicious than the people playing. Rip his head off! Kill him! So I don't want you to be able to kind of coat this narrative that only the people who breach the doors were the bad actors and everybody outside was on some kumbaya with flowers, because that's not the case. This was, in fact, a mob mentality and a lynch mob. And had they got their hands on Mike Pence, or, God forbid, if Obama happened to be driving by that day, it would have been a whole nother scenario.
Jamal, thank you for that analysis. Dan, I'm going to let you respond.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is easy. Actually easier than even Brother Jamal might suspicion. He seems to think that lynch mobbing is a white on black thing. Well, and he knows this already, or should know this already.
Here we go with it's we can yell fire in the crowded theater. Jim.
Excuse me. The lynch mob started with a crowd of people that shouted, "Give us Barabbas." The lynch mob started when our Lord and Savior Jesus
Dan, we're
Christ
short on time. What else do you have that's relevant to the conversation?
What's relevant is that lynch mobbing and that whole thing has been going on ever since they hung my Savior on a tree for crimes he did not commit. Lynching is not new.
No one is saying it's new. I think that Jamal's analysis, you're missing the point. Absolutely. Well, absolutely. Because this is this is the type of thing where the conservative right way, when you're talking about the conservative media these folks that call themselves journalists, right? You're not a journalist. It's separation of church of state, right? Where you're in cahoots with the president, and now you want to hide behind your journalistic. Oh well, I'm a journalist.
I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm just trying to be that voice in the wilderness that says lynching is not new.
Okay.
Lynching happened to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Okay,
Jamal, don't use the Lord to support the
I'm
stupidity.
not using the Lord. I'm merely saying what happened.
Okay, Dan, go ahead, Jamal. Go ahead, Jamal.
Let me address.
Go ahead, Jamal. Dr. Bradley's got to go take his meds. Go ahead.
So first of all, if you notice, I used two things. I said lynch mob, and I also said mob mentality.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so lynching, my friend Dan, actually, no, lynching is done with a rope. There's a hanging. Yeah. So what happened to your Lord and Savior was actually a crucifixion. Mob mentality still had a part to play as you were trying to go when they said, no, give us Barabbas, let Barabbas go, and hang Jesus. Yeah, you're right, because the mob mentality that I'm speaking to is oftentimes more vicious than the people. Look, Herod and them was ready to go, and Pilate and them was ready to let this thing go. But it was the mob mentality who wanted blood. So, in fact, in your point of trying to disprove my point, you've actually further illustrated it. So I thank you for that.
It usually happens.
Well, you're welcome. And the other part of this, when it comes to just straight out lynching happened not just because the person was black. Lynching was not just remember, we're only 11 to 15% of the population, whereas lynching, just what you just said, everything you said about the crowd gathering, this was white people hanging white people for white people crimes.
Most of us are familiar with the history. We all, as children, played hangman.
All right, so I'm just saying.
You're not illuminating anything.
Exactly, Dan.
Whether I'm illuminating it or not.
Dan, let him speak. Let him speak, Dan. Go ahead.
As it was applied to black people, is a very different thing than the hangings that took place as a matter of community justice in the Wild West and in these gold rush towns and all that. Yes, there were hangings and lynchings. And when it came to us as a people, as you know, it was very much a racial component.
Absolutely.
And as you know from maybe some of the historical work, we amassed up to over 5,000 lynchings in the South during Jim Crow and all this. So for us, the art of killing someone with a rope by their neck, no, that is ancient. But the fact of what happened in lynching in its context to us as black people is very different and specific.
And you're absolutely right.
Gentlemen, we've got about 3 minutes. I want to go through the table here because I want to give everybody equal time. I want to start with T. Michael. T. Michael, I'm going to let you weigh in here. I know you've been listening to this before we let you go.
Thank you, Larry. Happy New Year, Jamal. What I wanted to say is, for this new year, I hope Boston folks, black folks, really get serious about this construction industry. It's $1 billion industry, and we need to be more involved.
All right.
Great show, and I will be listening. Thank you.
Thank you. We got 2 minutes. Dan, I'm going to give you a minute and give Jamal the final word.
Okay. it's really simple. When it comes to the lynching and all of that stuff, yes, it's absolutely wrong. It always has been. But I really think in this new year that black people need to start fighting with their best weapon. Start fighting for their rights and for their causes, and they need to be doing it on their knees because that's the only way we're going to have true victory.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Jamal, you get the final word.
I would just quite simply say that for those who want to study and research and you get a certain knowledge about history or the Bible, just understand that those things cannot be fit to make your point. History, these things, they are what they are. They're matters of fact. They cannot be manipulated to fit like articles of clothing when you're trying to get dressed up. So,
amen.
Let's stick to the script.
All right, thank you. Hey, just stand by. I mean, you can tune in, Jamal, because we're going to be talking about the Mayor Wu's selection for the next police commissioner, the committee that she selected, and why Ed Davis was not a good pick. Thank you, folks. You've been listening to At the Round Table with Mamlet. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the Mayor's Selection Committee in our 8 o'clock hour. Until then, we'll see you in a few minutes.
I'm sorry, man.